Welcome to another entry of the 1000 Unsolved Mysteries Iceberg. I didn't forget about it, I didn't give up, I didn't die in the interim, I pinky promise. I'm back, I'm here. You clicked on this video for Iceberg? By God, we're going to be talking about Iceberg. That is 10 curated topics brought to you tonight for your viewing pleasure. So go ahead, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Trigger warning ahead for true crime related content. Murder and violence will be discussed in this segment. As everyone knows, 2001 was an extremely cheery year for everyone. It was during this cheery 2001 that the girl from the Maine was discovered in, you'll never guess it, the Maine River, located in Nied, Germany. Judging from the condition of her body, she was abused before she died and had been abused for years with signs of malnourishment. She was Iranian or Pakistani, but she had seemingly been living in the Frankfurt area for years. It was speculated that she was a servant girl in one of the diplomats' houses and may have been killed for disobedience, but in the research for this video I found basically zero reason for that to have been the case other than her being Middle Eastern. Why the authorities wanted to check this lead with little foundation, I don't know. Diplomatic protections prevented further investigations into diplomats, which was probably a good thing, because unless a diplomat for 1000% did do this, that would be a great way to ruin diplomatic ties and also just seem really racist. Despite her condition, being tied to a weight in the riverbed, having ear and nose piercings, and her minority status, she was never identified, and the case remains unsolved as one of Germany's most infamous Jane Doe cases out there. I could go and give you the whole spooky dooky bits and tickle your genitals a little with some over-the-top storytelling, but at the end of the day, that is just the most that I should give considering my station. So we're going to go ahead and get to the next case here. Luna Park Ghost Train Demon. Luna Park in Sydney, Australia is just as trustworthy as any other amusement park, which takes us to the day of their incident. Luna Park had a ride called Ghost Train, which in 1979 burned to the ground. Like I said, trustworthy, so let's talk about what exactly happened there. On the 9th of June 1979, the consequences of years of mismanagement would bear fruit. The Ghost Train ride had caught fire. Passengers said the fire originated from a foul fireplace, which quickly became a real fireplace. Management had not kept up on the sprinkler system, and when the fire started, the little staff that was there were not able to contain the blaze before people died. So where's the mystery in this? There isn't one. There is, however, a lot of speculation. The facts of the case are relatively simple. It's a tale as old as inept middle management. The name this mystery has, though, comes from a photo with the supposed story that the man in this photo claimed to be a servant of Moloch. So for whatever unchristian reason, this guy sets the train on fire. Except for the fact that even though the photo is seemingly real, there is nothing else to corroborate this story. The other theory is that a noted Australian arsonist burned down the ride to gain the title of the amusement park. I'm gonna just shut this one down where it stands here. Luna Park Ghost Train Demon theories are mostly the result of Christians having their own little satanic panic in Australia. Why it happened? Beyond me. Does that mean that it has any merit? I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. Not really. Carnival of Light. For some humorous context on this entry, before every single one of these videos, I go to the Patreon and orbitally nuke them with polls determining what topics are discussed. Carnival of Light has been brought up in a poll twice before this, and both times it was shot down. Carnival of Light is in massive quotation marks here, load-bearing quotation marks, avant-garde song by the Beatles, and it's considered lost media. Now, I won't lie, I'm not exactly a fan of the Beatles, so my commitment to finding this is exactly zero, but I will regale you with case details with great glee, because lost media is just ethical true crime content. In December of 1966, David Vaughan, who worked in pioneering the pop industry, reached out to Paul McCartney to see if he could provide them with a song for their upcoming event, a 1,000,000-volt light and sound rave, to be performed at the Roadhouse in January 26th and February 4th of 1967. The Beatles were a great choice at the time because their album Revolver had just come out and broke a lot of traditional rules of music at the time. And in a touch of good news for Vaughan, McCartney agreed to record the song for the event, and it was recorded early January of 1967. It was a 4-track song with no consistent beat or rhythm or melody, according to those who have heard it. And this was the 60s, though. People were bored out of their minds, and access to LSD was rampant. So the song did premiere at the rave. After that, however, everyone involved in the event was either dismissive or outright negative about the tape. Vaughan in particular seemed pretty pissed, saying, and I quote, "So the music was all live, except from the fucking tapes McCartney did. You know, where he did something without words that was very mysterious. I don't think it was up to much." Other reports called it rather a mess, or lacking in coherence, which is to be expected of a song lacking in rhythm, or beat, or melody. After this brief showing, the song was never released again. It still does exist, though, with McCartney himself still owning the master tapes and actually actively wanting to release it. Unfortunately for him, that requires consent from the estate of every Beatle, and that takes time. But if I'm being frank, it's doubtful we're missing out on much. The song does not sound like it is any good. There have been a few hoaxes online, but considering that Paul has the only tape, it's really doubtful that anyone has posted it anywhere. But it also kind of disqualifies it from the whole lost media thing, because the media is not lost. We know where it is. We just don't have access. The Charlie Project. Continuing the trend of not a mystery, why is this here? We have the Charlie Project. The Charlie Project is a missing persons database. It's named in honor of a missing persons case from 1874, when a one Charlie Brewster disappeared at only 4. The founder of the project, Megan Good, didn't intend for it to be this large, with it now housing details about over 15,000 cases. And why is this here? Great question. I don't really see a mystery. The website is just a website. And now we can consider the fact that the website catalogs mysteries, but I'm not really sure, in all honesty. Next entry, Mystery Booms. One of the few actual unsolved mysteries we have cooking for tonight's video, Mystery Booms. What the hell is that? Sometimes there's a loud noise, and no one has any idea why. It happens all over the United States, to the point that the United States Geological Service conducted a study on it. They found that in the West, it was tied to minor seismic activity, and the USGS posits that this is the case for the entirety of the nation then, with minor shifts in the Earth's crusts causing the loud noises. How does this work in the Midwest, where there are no tectonic plates to be shifted? Easy. The USGS posits that it is the cause of frostquakes, where as groundwater freezes over, the ground expands and eventually makes a very loud bang. In the East, though no fault lines are active, tectonic plates are blamed. This sounds good and dandy, but there is one teeny tiny little issue with this. No evidence. Where seismographs do detect movement, it often does not come up consistent with data that would lean toward there being earthquakes, and there aren't even any active seismograph stations in most of the Midwest, so that theory remains unsubstantiated. And I didn't wind up seeing any data from the eastern seaboard presented by the USGS, so what else could it be? There's no actual way to tell because, newsflash, humans make a lot of loud shit. But in some West Coast instances, seismology has turned forensic, with pipe bombs being discovered. And the East Coast, an ATM vandalism ring has been blamed for this. And the American Midwest is actually purgatory, so whatever is happening there is of little note. Sorry to all my Midwest viewers. Love you guys. Ultimately, with too many different loud things and too little in the way of study for these noises, there is no way to have any idea what the mystery booms are. Man of the Hole. I've been at this YouTube thing for a few years, and the Man of the Hole is one of the topics I've discussed a few times, and it's one of the topics that have stuck with me. There is no mystery here, it's just an extremely sad story. The Man of the Hole is a Brazilian native, a member of one of many uncontacted tribes. He lived alone in the state of Rondônia. The Man of the Hole was not a voluntary recluse. Between the 1970s and the 1990s, his people were massacred, and he was the only survivor of that conflict. It is not known what his name was, what language he spoke, or what his people called themselves. After the genocide, he wandered alone. He built houses. Every house had a 5-foot deep hole dug in it, and this is what earned him the nickname. This man wasn't an idiot, and he was aware that government officials were watching him, but the furthest he ever went with communication was to warn them of traps he set. In 2009, he survived another armed skirmish, and for the last decade of his life, the man experienced almost nothing of note. Briefly, authorities lost track of him in 2022, and further inspection revealed that the man of the hole had passed away. Like I said, no mystery, no grand thing, only reminders of tragedy. The man of the hole was discovered in 1996, and he spent 26 years alone, knowing he was the last of his people. Every person he knew or loved, dead. The largest buyer of glitter. In a rapid turnaround that is gonna undo the very serious vibe the last topic just brought up, we're talking about glitter now. 5 years ago, there was a New York Times interview that was positively silly. It was revealed that a major manufacturer of glitter wasn't allowed to reveal who bought the most glitter. Naturally, though, this made people go look into it because telling the hive mind of the internet that they don't get to know something is a surefire way to get them to try their damnedest to find out that thing that you told them no on. Like a 5-year-old. And so the search happened, mostly because this whole ordeal became a massive TikTok trend. Unfortunately, that happened in 2022, and in 2023 the mystery seems to be relatively solved. The issue with deducing the largest buyer of glitter is that glitter is literally everywhere. Football helmets, strip clubs, toothpaste, and at least 5 dozen other things that have glitter all over them forever. Funnily enough, toothpaste was the first thought of the hive mind, along with the automotive paint industry. Recently, a speculative report, obviously, and the name speculative, speculates that it is the US military, which is the most likely case here because, well, glitter has a surprising amount of utility purposes, including paint and use in explosives, and who makes the most bombs? That's right, baby, America. Sophocles. With a name like this, you should know that this mystery is discussing someone from ancient Greece, and the more cultured amongst us may well already know who Sophocles was. For the unaware, Sophocles is one of the most remembered playwrights ever, being the man who wrote Oedipus Rex, his most remembered and celebrated work, and an estimated 120 other plays. Of these 120 plays, though, only 7 survived to the modern era. Strangely enough, though we aren't discussing the lost media wellspring that this man is, we are discussing his death. Sophocles, in his life, was an interesting fellow. Sophocles was born somewhere between 496 and 497 BC to a wealthy family, which is what allowed him to study and write plays. He was also probably gay. Enough about his life and the art that had a disturbing amount of parent fucking in it. How did the man die? Considering that it's only been fucking millennia, we have no way of actually telling how this happened, but we do have roughly 2 solid theories. The first theory is that he choked on a grape. The man was 91. He started to have a rough time with just about everything the way that people at 91 do. The second is a bit more fantastical and supposes that he was reading a verse from his play Antigone, a rather long verse, and having not taken a breath, when he finished the verse he promptly died. Ultimately, this is entirely unsolvable. Greek historians were funny as fuck in the sense that "it came to me in a dream" was a viable form of evidence, and again, this whole thing was millennia ago. I personally favor the grape death. The alternative is very cool, don't get me wrong, but being realistic about elderly people, they're highly intelligent toddlers, more so than other adults. Choking on a grape is a very rich and geriatric Greek way to go. Of course, with many figures from antiquity, many myths and legends cropped up surrounding his death, but for like the 4th time, say it with me now, this happened millennia ago. You're all big kids, believe which one you want to believe, and talk about it in the comments down below. Boltzmann brain. The Boltzmann brain isn't really an unsolved mystery, more so a thought experiment. Running theme for this episode not being a mystery. I've already discussed it for previous videos, so prepare yourself for a bit of existential horror. What is the Boltzmann's brain? Easy. In 1896, a physicist by the name of Ludwig Boltzmann noticed that the universe was actually less chaotic than the field of thermodynamics suggested it should be. Something about their math was wrong. His theory was that the universe just preferred being in a lower energy state, and thus we lived in a lower energy state universe. His critics responded with a mockingly absurd argument, saying that maybe we're just brains that had randomly spawned into existence, and every memory was just a split-second fluctuation in a low-energy state universe. Everyone agreed that it was a good joke, and the whole thing was left alone for a century, until 2002. In 2002, cosmologists started to get a bit worried, because if you randomly generated a lot of structures, you were likely to have an abnormal skew of human brain-shaped structures, and so the Boltzmann brain came back into debate. The structure of a brain could in fact randomly generate thanks to the law of infinite probability, which states that anything can happen and in fact will happen. Not to worry though, some nerds ran the math on the whole thing, and the time needed to generate a Boltzmann brain should be so far beyond the age of the universe that it's really unfeasible that we have one right now, or that you are one, unless you are. An issue arises depending on what theory of the end of the universe you ascribe to. If heat death is the way that the universe ends, then we have to determine what kind of vacuum the universe is in. A de Sitter vacuum or a Minkowski vacuum, which determines if the brain once formed could radiate energy back out and dissipate. Current evidence leans towards a de Sitter space, meaning that it will in fact dissipate. Heat death of the universe makes occurrences of the Boltzmann brains much more likely too, because a Boltzmann brain is far less likely to occur if there's matter in the universe. A bit of tomfuckery related to the law of infinite probability. But with heat death of the universe, eventually all matter goes away and there's nothing but void. Modern science still has an issue with the brain problem. A lot of modern physicists want to avoid the concept entirely and scientifically prove that no, these things don't exist and won't ever exist. I mean, the concept is fucking horrifying to think of, so that's fair. I would also prefer to live in a universe that doesn't occasionally spawn entities capable of sentience but incapable of interacting and observing. That's some proper body horror. That I say for the likes of like Warhammer 40k. Unfortunately though, the scientists are having a rather hard time disproving the concept, and while lack of proof against is not proof for, it doesn't bode well for the research teams wanting to study thermodynamics and quantum fluctuations while also avoiding the brain issue. So where's the mystery? It's twofold, on whether or not these things exist, which remains unproven, but is very likely on account of the law of infinite probability, and the second one is the cheap, but what if you're a Boltzmann brain? Which is impossible to prove or disprove and can strike a panic attack in the existential, but is also completely irrelevant because what does it matter? Sightings of Tasmanian tigers. That's how we're finishing this out. Before we begin this here segment, I need to give a massive shout out to the guy who lurks about here, known as Liam Padmore. Being a Tasmanian native and an editor to the channel, when he saw the topic was being brought up in video, he decided to write up a report on this, and that is a huge portion of the segment. Everyone say thank you, Mr. Padmore, in the comments down below. Now to get one thing out of the way, the Tasmanian tiger is not a tiger. It was a marsupial, like a kangaroo, or other evil pouch-having beasts. A more accurate name for them, the scientifically preferred one, is Thylacine. On top of not being tigers, they're also not really Tasmanian. They used to roam all of Australia before being sent to the fucking Shadow Realm by the Aboriginal peoples of Australia. And you may suspect, depending on your knowledge of Australian fauna, that this was because they posed a threat to livestock and children. You would suspect wrong, because they were more like a large scavenger cat that didn't really like living prey. Why were they bazingaed from reality then? Easy. Australia used to be home to even larger megafauna, which, as terrifying as that sounds, is a fact. But about 50,000 years ago, most of the megafauna died off. You can see the ecological leftovers of this event all over the world, and the Thylacine was such a leftover. With no creatures much too large to be accepted by the creatures made in God's image left, there was no longer an ecological niche for such a large scavenger, and so they started starving to death over the course of a few thousand years, with the creatures finally giving out in the last century. Or so you may believe. The idea of them being extinct isn't going away just yet, but I do need to elaborate. If these things aren't harming anything, why did the government put out a bounty for them? Easy, because the government needed a quick and easy distraction for how shit of a job they were doing, so the same way that the nation of America continues to spiral even further than most ever thought possible, they're like, whoa, guys, don't worry about living wage, there's aliens! The Australian government did the same thing, where it's like, whoa, guys, don't worry what we're doing with the natives. Shoot that fucking creature! So we already have it established that our only two outcomes are yes thylacine and no thylacine, and we already have a pretty solid case for no. However, in the maybe yes side of things, we have Liam, is the guy who wrote a report on this. Really good report. Tasmania is rather large, and it's really just wilderness. Not a lot of people live on the island, and not a lot of tourists explore it. This is wilderness so untamed that it likely houses cannibal families, and actually literally houses plants from the Jurassic Age. The people of Tasmania, however, love two things: exploring and apparently exporting heroin. Actual thing. Back to the discussion, though. The account I got from Liam, who, again, lives there, is that he doesn't know anyone who's ever seen one. He's known people actively hunting for them, but people don't find them. Even our most supporting article finds the possibility of thylacines being around today extremely slim because they filled an ecological niche that is no longer there. They were just a creature doomed to die thousands of years ago. They just happened to be accelerated in that process by some cunts with sticks and guns and a bounty. Alright, you made it to the end of another video. Good job. Hooray. You did great. I can get my thumb in the frame, I think. So, if you liked the video, go ahead, like, comment, subscribe, do all of that stuff that everyone tells you to do. They tell you to do it for a reason. You're clearly mildly bored, I'm clearly mildly entertaining, blah 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 blah, all of the same stuff I say at the end of every outro. Genuinely, not mockingly, from the very bottom of my heart, huge thanks to all of the patrons. Their funding makes this channel possible. If you'd like to join the Patreon, the link is always down in the description below. And also, huge thanks to my now very expanding team. Come October of 2023, I should, hopefully, provided I don't jinx it by announcing it in public, have people to work with in helping me edit the videos, which is gonna be great. Now, on to the nitty-gritty that a solid 7 people care about, if they're still listening. Sometimes I'll have the video out in a week, turns into a month and some change, and I'd love to tell you that I was just off enjoying my life and that things were so fine and dandy that I just completely forgot to do YouTube. That wasn't really the case. I've just, I say this jokingly every time I'm back behind the camera. Things aren't getting better. My life is full of a comical amount of misfortune. And I'm not saying that to ask for pity, I'm just saying that because if I were to describe why I haven't been into YouTube as much, I would sound like Lemony fucking Snicket. And if you don't get that reference, you either need to go read some books or you're too young to be watching my channel. So, all that out of the way, when it rains it pours. Anywho, I won't lie to you, this is probably going to be the last time you see me for a little bit. The next few videos I have are really, really big. For reference, I'm sick and tired of being on the same level of the Mystery Iceberg after a year of working on it. So, the next Mystery Iceberg entry is just the rest of level 1. All of it. No more. It's done. Bye. And then, of course, video essays and stuff, and I'm putting together new icebergs to look at. Essentially, I just want there to be long-form, high-quality content. You know, I tried my whole short-form bit, and it had its go, but now I'm off to other things, to greener pastures. Anyway, I've talked your ear off enough. Thank you so much for watching, for listening, for being here. Thank you for the support. If you liked the video, like. If you disliked the video, dislike. Tell me I suck in the comments down below. I don't know. It's your life, man. Have a great time. I'll see you eventually. And until next time, memento mori.